Hey everybody, what's going on? Rob Cesternino back, and I'm so excited for this one here today because about sometime during Survivor 46, we had a great chat. Same format. We talked on a Saturday, and people, I read the comments, and people loved it, and they said you got to do more with this guy. And now here he is, and since then, he's had an incredible run on Jeopardy, and back with us to talk about everything that's going on in Survivor 47. It's Drew Basile. Drew, how are you?
You know, Rob, I'm doing great, and it's a pleasure to be here on. I think maybe the best show for me,
Yes.
right? Like when I'm on Survivor, the fans are neutral. When I'm on, Jeopardy, they're like, you're just answering questions. It's not personalities limited, but
You brought too much personality.
I'm truly fetid, so it's great. It's great to be here.
You're home.
But I have to say, Rob, it's not all good. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the last time I came on your show, it was to discuss Jeopardy. And the interview that we had got written up in the New York Post.
Yes, I saw that. I saw that. Yeah.
I know. That was shocking. I was like, wow, Rob truly has some reach. You're like,
we have reach. We have reach. Now, Drew, tell me if you feel this way. If you say something in this podcast that ends up being newsworthy, that's probably also bad, right?
Oh, bad for me or bad for you?
Probably
it really must have been insane.
Probably both. Like if you say something in this interview that ends up getting picked up in the New York Post.
Yeah, and then you're like one of those like Joe Rogan people.
Yeah, it's not going to be like, Drew Basile, amazing takes on Rob Has a Podcast. Read all about it.
No, yeah. It's going to be like danger, cancellation. I mean, come to think of it, Rob, like I'm kind of a ticking time bomb for you. I can say anything.
You know what? I appreciate it. And I welcome that, Drew, because I feel that one of the things that I really respect about you is that I think that you're not afraid to say a controversial or hot take. And I want to really, continue to bring that into the show because you could say something and I could agree with it or not, but I love hearing it from you.
I appreciate that, Rob. I feel very free at this point. My Survivor career is
like
free. A year and a half. It's been a while, and I recently flew out to LA just for some business, and everybody was out there, and they all knew each other, and all the survivors were hanging out. And I was like, wow, like this is it's great to see you guys, but I'm so disconnected. I live in England, like this doesn't matter to me at all. This is just playing with house money. Being so distant from the community, I can just open fire. And
you felt the other survivors all know each other and spend a lot of time together. And you're the cousin who lives overseas, doesn't really get to see the rest of the family.
It is a perfect metaphor, Rob. I'm vaguely affiliated and far. I can come to the event, but I don't know who's there. Is basically how things are.
Yeah, and the irony is that really your cast is considered of maybe of any of the casts, specifically of the new era, the closest cast.
Oh, and we absolutely are. Being on the show, you're privy to different information than you are not on the show. So you get to know about the dynamics of the cast and drama and gossip and things like that.
Yeah.
And woo, let me tell you, being on the season 45 cast was like getting off the tracks at the last moment because there have been so much insane stuff to happen in these high school cliques.
Yes.
So I'm very grateful. I love everybody in the 45.
But
cast.
You feel like that you're still in the group chats. You're still you're informed, but you're just not part of the drama.
I guess. I mean, I'm only in one group chat.
Yeah,
two.
There's probably more. There's probably more
on Instagram. Then I'm in the 45 group chat. So I get with the Christmas card updates and stuff. Okay. But all the real gossip occurs in the DMs, the one-to-one.
Yeah.
DM.
Okay.
So, yeah. But there's a new community forming, Rob. I don't know if you know about this.
Yes.
Michigan is on the rise.
Michigan. Oh, I thought you were going to say on Survivor 47. Okay, but in Michigan is on the rise.
Michigan. I mean, you got to bet on Michigan right now, guys. You got to go buy property because number one, the Lions are killing it. I was just talking about this with Rob. But number two, Michigan has become a Survivor dynasty. I mean, they're like a feeder school. We've got Kenzie from Michigan, Rachel, Kyle.
Kenzie's from Michigan. I thought she's from North Carolina.
No. She grew up in freaking Gibraltar. She grew up
but she lives here now.
What?
She lives here now.
Well, no. But she grew up in Michigan. You can't take that. You can't take the
I don't
Midwest
care
status.
where she was. They don't. You don't get to claim Kenzie. Who else you got?
I credit Kenzie's social game 95% to the Michigan charm. 95%.
All right.
Like,
who
she's
else?
a great player.
Who
But
else?
she was just actualizing the God-given state characteristics that we have. So if you want to win Survivor, you got to come to Michigan. This is the lesson.
That was it? Just Kenzie grew up there?
Yeah. But like, Rachel could win. Maybe she's a winner.
Is Rachel
maybe
from,
I could have won.
Is Rachel from Michigan?
Rachel is from Michigan.
I didn't know
actually
that.
lived down the street from Rachel.
Well, that's one of the things I feel like that Rachel could be our newest Survivor winner. And I feel like that, look, she's a good game player. I don't feel like I know anything about Rachel.
Yeah.
What's her job?
She does like advertising.
She's advertising?
Yeah, I think she's
I didn't know
advertising.
that.
Yeah, no, and she works. I think she works for like car companies and stuff. I don't really know. And maybe maybe I'm breaking the the containment zone on this information. But
She advertises car companies. Well, that's big business in Detroit. If you're going to advertise car companies,
I'll tell you, I was just in Phoenix, and all the cars are autonomous. Oh, she's a graphic designer. I just had an epiphany just from the. Ding, ding, ding.
Does she do graphic design for the car companies?
Yeah. That's what she does. Anyways, I forgot what I was going to say, but very embarrassing. I'm sorry, Rachel.
All right. Well, I'd like to talk more about that. Rachel, 34 from Dexter, Michigan, is a graphic designer. And I mean, I'm sure I knew that at one point, but it has not been part of her journey. She has not even given one confessional as a graphic designer.
Well, honestly, good. I hate when people get these like shoehorned in things about their career, and they're like, "Oh, I'm a shoe salesman, so I got to know when the shoe fits," and I don't trust. Like, okay,
you could do a lot with as a shoe salesman. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I'm about to be the sole survivor.
They probably wouldn't cast a shoe salesman this day and age. They're like, like AI researchers only. Need not apply.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about, I think the shoe salesman, I think that it's so interesting now because this past season on Big Brother, we had a guy who worked in a video store. So I think it would be like ironically interesting, a shoe salesman, where it would have been like 20, 30 years ago, like maybe the most boring job. Now I think that's like, okay, I'm a shoe salesman. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the video store is really loop the loop. Because it's like, where would you even find one of those these days? I mean, it's like a rare like creature you would bring to like the circus. Here's the last surviving video store employee, and he was kind of a character too, so maybe he'd really fit in the circus.
Oh, you watch?
No, I see on Twitter.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
He's the character. All right. So, Drew, I guess why don't we start with we're heading into the final four. Do you feel like that you have a good read on how the season is shaking out?
A good read. I mean, the season is over.
It's over.
It's finished. I mean, you can slot it into the rankings at from this point because
that's what Dalton Ross does.
Oh, already?
I think he already does. I got to look it up. Let me see what he did.
Rob, is that the finale is the most boring episode of Survivor.
Do you like that they made it a 2-part finale?
Not at all. And I'll bet you they don't even like it. I read in some interview that like CBS asked them at the last second to extend their show because like they didn't have airs time and like they had thought the presidential debate would consume a Wednesday and it didn't.
Yeah.
We got left with this half-formed, finale where all the juicy stuff already happened. And then next week we're heading to the coronation. It's like, I look at it kind of like election day, right? You go and you vote on like November 20th. Whenever you vote.
I think it's earlier than that. I think it's earlier than that. Yeah. You're not in the country. American. Yeah.
You go and you vote in November and you know what's going to happen. And then you got to wait like 2 more months. And then it happens and you're supposed to be excited the second time. That's kind of how I feel about this finale. Like, okay, we know who's going to win. And now we got to wait a couple months and then we'll, get to see the awkward reunion where like Sam and Teeny or Sue will try not to cry. But yeah, no, I think it's done and dusted. I think Rachel has played a really impressive game. And the edit is really pumping her up as like the big threat, the master firemaker challenge beast. And it's just going to be a shock if she doesn't win.
Yeah. Do you feel like that you have a sense of how the final four will go down? What happens on Wednesday night?
I'm not really sure.
How do we get to a Rachel win?
Yeah, I mean, the question is, does Rachel win immunity or does Rachel make fire? Because there's
Mhm.
no way they're gonna like sit her out.
Yeah, and I agree.
Uh,
I'm 100% with you. I believe that it's going to be Rachel crowned as the winner on Wednesday night, but I do think that it is interesting to talk about how it works out, because if Rachel wins the Final Four immunity, do you see Rachel, should she make the fire?
no, don't make the fire. There's no point in making the fire. The thing about that Final Four immunity that's very paradoxical is that it actually, I think Jake was ahead of the curve on this.
Yeah.
I didn't really appreciate it until Jake started to do it as the last chance.
Yeah. Break the challenge.
Well, no, it's all break the challenge for sure. The firemaking, you can just take the knife and you can threaten Jeff, and then you're into the final three. It's a foolproof strategy. That would be breaking the challenge. But no, I mean, it's all about theater, right?
Yeah.
And I think that there's kind of a mistake in the way that people are viewing the firemaking right now. Like if I were to go into 50, I would say, well, listen, the winning the Final Four immunity is an advantage, right? And you're going to deploy this advantage, this instrument, any way you want. And so you're choosing the best person to win. Choosing the best person to win is like my move. That's how I would pitch it. And I think that right now, Rachel is so obviously ahead of the game that she can just, like pit the children together, have them fight it out, and she'll be fine. She can take credit. She'll be like, this was my move. I was neutralizing, a big threat, or I was letting two people who aren't going to win anyways, compete for this meaningless award. She's already got such a high threat level with the jury that, and moreover, more importantly, there's nobody that can lose in firemaking that is consequential enough to add to that threat level. That is just like, why would she participate?
Well, I think it's interesting, like in the context of your season, where I was trying to figure this out yesterday when we do the patron call and people call in and we take a lot of questions about this kind of stuff. So, Dee wins the Final Four challenge in your season, and then Jake was like, "Hey, let me make the fire," and it really played out where your buddy Austin, he wanted to go into the fire.
Oh yeah,
he wanted to do it, and Dee's like, "No, I'm going to take Austin to the final three." And I kind of feel like that for Rachel, that could be the move. And I hadn't really been thinking about this yet, because I had been worried for Rachel. I saw a potential scenario where, okay, she says, you know what? I'm not going to give up my necklace. Sam and Sue, you make the fire. And now here's Sam, who's been talked about as a threat. He has a chance to kind of like make a last impression with the jury. How impression, I mean, you weren't, but you know how these juries are. They see somebody make a fire.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like, oh my God. They made the fire?
Yeah. It's like they've never seen a fire before. Nobody's ever made a fire in 35 days. Or
it burns right through the rope.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But
but that was smart that Dee took Austin to the end, didn't give him that chance, and maybe that's the move for Rachel. Like I'm taking Sam to the final three instead of sitting here with the goats, Sue and Teeny.
I think it's absolutely the move. I think that Rachel, I mean, she said it last episode that like Sam is probably the biggest threat of the remainders, the non-Genevieve and Rachel's. Sam I hear actually he's not that good at fire, but
where'd you hear that from? Your sources?
I think it was actually, Rob, you'll be impressed by this. I watched the exit interviews.
Oh, okay.
And I think in one of the exit interviews, like Andy or Genevieve was like, Sam, Teeny, and Sue are bad at fire.
Okay. I thought Sam wanted to beat Genevieve at fire.
I have no idea. I didn't watch that exit interview.
Yeah, I think Andy says he's very good at the fire.
Yeah, Andy's good at a lot of things, but sometimes Andy's not good at things he should be good at. Like he's got all these muscles, he's all big and strong, and he sucks at challenges. I won more challenges than Andy did, and look at me.
Yeah. How are you at the fire? Did you make a fire?
I didn't make a fire a day. I was pampered out there. I mean, I had like Austin catching fish. Dee's always fixing the shelter.
Yeah.
I just like laid around, and I always said like, I must be doing pretty good socially because I'm so lazy and nobody complains.
Right.
So it must be all fine.
Yeah. Did you practice though? Did you go out like in the woods and then practice making fires?
I made them on my lawn in Philly. And I lived in just a regular house, but the house was on Frat Row. So this was like quite comical to everyone walking by, and we would
Did anybody call the police that there's an arsonist?
That was not my worry, but it never, it never happened. All kinds of shenanigans go on. This doesn't even make, the newspaper. In Philly and in within the college campus generally. UPenn in the news recently. One of our esteemed alumni, shot this insurance guy. So this is big news.
Oh, okay. Oh, that is a famous alumni.
Yeah. So see, how do I compare to that? I wouldn't want to, but also, it's not a big deal. So, anyways, moving on. The really Rachel has nothing to gain from participating in the fire. Sue and Teeny are like bluegills. I mean, they're small fish. Beating Sam turns what is like a dominant victory into a drubbing. It's not really necessary. She knows that. Rachel is so sharp in these little calculations that I think this plan you've provisioned out is really sharp, is really smart. And I think the only way Rachel ends up
I mean, don't give me credit. I just remembered your season and thought about, that's what D did. Yeah, that is a good move.
D credit, D, strategic mastermind. Nobody's stock has risen higher in recent, years, which I like and agree with. But yeah, it just seems like a no-brainer. And the real question is, if she loses, are people going to put her in? I mean, I bet you that everyone knows she's good at fire.
Let's give Sam the necklace. Okay. Yeah. How does Sam play this? Sam has to take Rachel into the fire, right?
Oh, it has to. I mean, has to put it on the line. I think he would do it too. I think that Sue, though, I doubt Sue puts Rachel in fire. And then Teeny, I really like Teeny. I've met Teeny in real life, actually. She's really, a lot of fun.
Very fun.
Really a lot of fun. Say again?
Very fun.
Yeah, totally. Really nice person. But it seems to be that Teeny is kind of like not aware of like how she sits in the hierarchy.
Yeah.
I think Teeny is just kind of envisioning final tribal councils, like this point at the end of the game where like she gets to see all her friends and they all tell her how much they love her, and then she'll have $1 million. But it's
been a rough road for Teeny, and it's been well documented all season long about how Teeny. I actually went back. I watched the first episode again this morning as like we're heading into finale week. I thought it'd be a good thing to go back and check in on a couple of things with the edit. And, Teeny comes in and like is actually like pretty confident that Teeny's like social ability and knowledge of the show is really gonna, carry the day.
Yeah. No, I mean, and it's kind of like an emperor with no clothes situation, that like the edit is just treating Teeny like she's like, like an end game player. Like she's like some strategic mastermind for a long time. And you're waiting for like the other, for it to happen. And it never happens. I mean, and we're at a point where even though the edit is super nice to Teeny, it can't disguise it anymore. And so it's kind of like a weird mismatch of like edit and gameplay that I feel like we actually haven't on the show seen in a long time. So vivid.
Well, there was that moment where Teeny holds up, like Teeny's bag got burnt in the fire, and Teeny talked about like this situation in the game reminds Teeny about her identity and her struggles with that. And then look at this bag, my bag burnt in the fire, and this bag represents me and the fire that's been lit underneath me. Stephen Fishback said, "This is Teeny's winner edit. Everybody get on board. Here we go."
Stuff is getting going.
And since that point, Drew, Teeny has only voted correctly for Kyle.
The easiest vote of all time, the easiest one to get on the red. It's been a bad. At
every turn, Teeny is going the wrong way.
Yeah, Teeny is all turned around. But I do have a lot of sympathy for Teeny because like super young, like what 22?
I think 23, I believe
23. So I was 22 out there. I was the youngest person out there in the season. And playing Survivor so young is really hard. Like I'm sure there are a lot of these super fans who are like, chomping at the bit, raring to go. You don't know who you are at 23. Like you haven't really experienced anything. You haven't really gone through anything. You've never had to like work for your bread, really. I mean, maybe you have. I mean,
you haven't been a breadwinner.
Yeah, exactly. You never had like real responsibilities. So you don't know who you are, and there's like all these identity questions thrown around. You're also a little immature. Like I certainly am. I still am super immature.
Drew, I went to go play Survivor. I had just turned 24 when I went to go play Survivor. I lived in my parents' basement.
Well, I guess you're better than us because you seem to have it all.
I'm empathizing that. I mean that I wasn't a grown up.
Yeah.
Nobody should have let me be on television.
Yeah, and you went out to like the real jungle, man. Like you went out to like a real like inhospitable place. We got
Why,
to go to
Fiji's
like
not a real
Jamaica.
jungle?
No, Fiji is like one of the softest biomes on the planet. Like you could get lost for 2 weeks on your own in Fiji and survive. It's like no, I mean it's not. I like Fiji. I would go on vacation there, but it's like
Yeah.
Fiji is a cushy place. It's not like the Amazon where there's like
You're saying
snakes.
if Survivor's in a place where people actually go on vacation, that's a good spot. Like very few people, like only like maniacs vacation in the Amazon.
Yeah, I guess there are gradients to it, but like if you head out like Tocantins, like holy shnikes, you're screwed. The
Yeah.
Amazon. Oh my lord. Fiji in comparison is a little bit of a cakewalk, I think. I don't know. I never been to the Amazon. Hopefully I never go.
Yeah.
It sounds really freaking
Overrated.
awful. Yeah, overrated. I believe that, Rob. And I'm sure also as like age 24, you were really tweaking. You were like, what am I doing? Like, why did I agree to do this?
Drew, I had never like gone camping before.
Yeah.
I just like I would have like sleepless nights of like, I'm gonna go die. What am I doing?
Oh my gosh. Actually getting on Survivor like was one of the worst weeks of my life because I was like, holy crap. Like there's no out now. Like I gotta go do this thing. I'm gonna humiliate myself. I'm gonna sunburn. I mean, that was weirdly high on the priority list, sunburn, but it's a very scary thing to commit to. In Fiji, though, it's a little bit easier. It's still hard. Teeny, I can tell that like Teeny is struggling with some of the kind of like same tailspins, same like worries that I felt like I got into at the end of the game. So it gives me a lot of sympathy for Teeny, but it cannot be denied that like not only do they have no chance of winning the game, but I'm not really sure that they're aware of their position in the game. And so maybe it's like a situation where like it's best that somebody goes out at Final Four fire making.
Drew, I'd love to talk to you a little bit about that, your season and your alliance that you were a part of. It's such an anomaly in the new era. The Reba 4, as it was, really is such a standout in the new era in that it was a group that was able to ride out, for the most part, all of the, temptations in the post-merge game. And really, we have seen very few alliances in the new era of Survivor. Do you think that there was something in particular that you all were thinking or doing that made that group be such a standout in this era of Survivor where there aren't alliances?
No, I mean it's an interesting question. I felt like the Reba 4 was kind of like the prototype to like the ideal way that Survivor right now should be played. Because you have these kind of fractured 3-tribe formats, where like the expectation is, I mean, you don't even have big voting blocks to begin with, but the expectation is you're going to leave those voting blocks, you're going to be flexible. And if you just hold together, like if you just resist the temptation as your tribe, I mean, easy win, right? Like, cause you're playing these atomized groups, you can just dominate. It's like in Borneo, when you show up to the merge and it's 1-1-1-1-4, it's like the 4 can just take it. But it's hard to resist the temptation, as you've pointed out. And I think why Reba was kind of so successful was we were 4 of the best players on the season, talent-wise. I mean, like we're probably like 4 of the 6 best players in the season. We all really liked each other, and we all kind of correctly had calculated that the way to do well in Survivor at this point is to play a loyal game. So we had every incentive to set it up. I think if you're going on Survivor, you want, and it was interesting. One of the things I also saw in like the exit interviews and stuff is that everyone wanted to work with Sue this time around. Did you catch this? People were talking about it in the pregame. They all wanted to work with Sue.
Yeah. Okay. So in the preseason, people wanted to work with Sue, but you think that was a Mama J?
Yes. It's because people look at the older woman and say the older woman is a loyal ally. Everyone wants a loyal ally. Everyone recognizes that, like, I just need like people who are going to like truck together for a long time, even if it's not like the flashiest way to play. But the point is, if you get a lot of good players to agree to do that, then you're set. I mean, it's in spades. So the Reba 4, obviously, I think like the most successful alliance of the new era. I don't think that's like a controversy. I don't think that's showboating.
Yeah, I think it's for the Reba 4 and the Tika 3. But I think that for the Tika 3, I think that there were other bigger groups, and they were sort of like more forced together. I feel like that they did not really have like as many options to be able to go their separate ways. But yeah, the re before, had the numbers and stuck together.
It's kind of like the invisible hand. You ever hear about this, Rob? Like in
In
capitalism,
economics.
like in Adam
Yeah.
Smith. Yeah,
Yeah.
economics. That it's like if everyone just acts in their self-interest, things kind of like work out, right? And what we have here, economically speaking, are irrational actors. People who have not recognized what's in their self-interest. People who are obsessed this season, especially, so fixated on the narrative. The narrative of I'm playing Survivor and what do I want my legacy to be, and what are the audience at home going to be thinking, that they're behaving irrationally in a
Yeah.
gameplay setting. And if you're a rational actor, you recognize that the way to go is to build a steady, coalition of people you can beat. So if you're the best player, you need to work together with the other people who are the best, and just ride it out to the end game and then start playing at the end
Yeah.
game.
Drew, do you think that the announcement of a Survivor 50 with returnees and the sort of allure of coming back to Survivor changed the way, when you say that people were making irrational decisions in this season, do you think that people were maybe motivated by things other than just how to win this particular season of Survivor?
Well, I don't remember if 50 was announced
It
before
was.
they went to tape.
Yes.
It was. Okay, definitely. I mean, even if it hadn't been announced, of course they're self-involved with 50. The thing about Survivor that is really incommunicable to like people who haven't done the experience is that it is this insane, rush of adrenaline and real. Like every day you're fighting for your life. Every day you're like scrambling. Every day is high octane. And when you come back to real life doesn't feel real, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is like a 4 to 6 month period, I'll say, where like you're just kind of floating on air. And it's, this wasn't just my experience. It feels very inconsequential in comparison to this like visceral, adrenaline experience that you've just had. But when that fades away, a lot of people are desperate for the next fix. It's like a drug. Like I'm desperate to feel that way again. I'm desperate to not just like, feel this like profound meaningfulness of every day, but also like I'm desperate for the attention. I want to be on TV. I want Instagram followers, right? Like most people's lives are fairly inconsequential, mine included. And to have this chance of, for 6 months to feel like your life isn't consequential, or a year because you've taped and now you're waiting to air, knowing like secretly you're a time bomb of social media likes. I mean, it's addictive. And so people immediately, as soon as they go out of the game, as soon as they leave, are looking for that next fix. And that's why they behave so ridiculously on social media. That's why we get, a lot of people, like obviously you and Fishback are immune at this point. You're like, in the pantheon. But like a lot of people, that's why we get like these little takes, and everyone messages the people currently on, like, oh, you were so cool. Because it's all just like trying to get into the slipstream.
Yeah.
It's all just trying to get back out there.
Did you get a lot of messages when you were on 45?
I don't think I was ever one of the cool kids, so my messages were fairly limited, but some people got a lot of messages. I was just like a nerd, like, oh, we've seen enough of these guys.
Because
like,
I almost never have sent messages to any of the players that are from, and I think a lot of times I think that the players think that I don't like them, because I try not to engage at all with the players because I'm so worried about being spoiled or knowing anything. I try to leave the players alone that are on the, so I don't even know what to say to somebody who is like on the show.
What do you say? I have this problem all of my life. Like, it's like I'm on LinkedIn. Like I want a job at this company. What do I say? Like, hello, please hire me. I'm like, reaching out to the survivors, like, hello, if we ever play again, it would be really cool. I think you're cool. Like, no, what? I don't know. I don't know the subtlety, but a lot of people do. And I think that like the people who play more recently are invested, Rob. So, I mean, for you, it's been a couple decades. If you're still like, if you're still on the cutting edge.
It's been like pretty much like
Lord.
a Drew Basile lifetime since
yeah, literally. I mean, I was barely around. I was in a cradle at that point, Rob. I was unintelligible. So it's been a while. I mean, no offense. I mean, you're a young guy.
I don't take any offense. I think it's great. I really enjoy getting to talk to like this new generation of people that grew up with Survivor, And I hope you know this. You're one of my favorites to talk to, but
Oh,
there's a bunch of people, young people from the new era that really just like are so quick thinking about the show and have all sorts of interesting ideas about the show and where it is. So no disrespect at all.
no. Well, I appreciate it, Rob. I do. You're my favorite to talk to too, of all the podcasters and such. I mean, there's a lot of imitators, but you're the original, and I admire that. But let's talk 50, right? Because it's in everyone's mind. Everyone's
Yeah.
playing for a return. I've said this before. I've said, come on, podcasts, your podcast, and said that the jury is a really flawed format. Because there's a separate game that goes on in the jury, and I won't reiterate that because people get really mad. It affects the validity of their favorite winners. But jurors are making decisions based on wins.
But can I ask you? But can I ask you to just can you give us the quick version?
Oh yeah, for sure. Okay, the basic premise, and every time I say this, I get all these like mean things. So I've refined it in my mind. I've distilled it. But there's the game going on in out there on the island.
Yeah.
But there is a separate game that goes on at home or like on
In the jury.
They're playing not just get their way and have their favorite people win, but to have a winner that reflects well in them, to appear well on the jury, either by having big reactions or speaking the most, or making a positive impression. If you go rewatch the 43 jury, you'll see this in spades. Like everyone is showboating, everyone's performing. The real thing about the jury, though, is that, like, imagine a legal jury. That's kind of the model for Survivor, explicitly the model. Back in the day, it was like they're gonna like hear the case and they're gonna decide who's the winner. What if the legal jury has like their stock dividends are like dependent on who wins? They're invested. I mean, like they're putting their finger in the scale. It's not going to be impartial decision making. It's going to be decision making that's reflective of their own self interests on how they'll look. And also it'll be decision making reflected on the kind of weird psychodynamics of Ponderosa, because Ponderosa is a weird place. I mean, everyone is grieving. It's like a funeral in certain ways, but then also it's like everyone is immediately playing to, play again, and to kind of like solidify their narrative that they were the best among the jury. And that means denigrating other people. And so basically, the results of the first game on the island are entirely disconnected from the more important results of the second game, which not only do you not get to see on television, but like it is then determining the winner. So the jury has some real problems that I've tried to express in brief. And these problems really are amplified when 50 is on the cards, because then it's not just like, oh, well, who's going to win this season and make me look good? But like, who's going to set up my narrative for 50? Who do I want to kind of like, play 50 with? Do I who might the producers want to win? They'll never tell you, but who might they want to win so that I can, be good and vote for them to get on 50? I mean, there's a lot of layers.
Can I go back to when you say that, okay, so it's like if there are stockholders that are on the case for the jury, what do you mean by that in terms of like, and 43, I feel like is like the controversial jury opinion. Like, are you saying like that the people on the jury feel like that's the best winner of the season in their mind, and so that's what they want to do?
Okay. I had this thought with Austin that when I was up there voting on the jury, if Austin won, I would be an idiot. Right? If Austin won, I would become editing wise a liability, like a guy who would say anything socially. Austin would be the strategic mastermind. My edit would be diminutive, right? I would be like the sidekick, the Sancho Paz, which actually I guess Sancho Paz is smarter than Don Quixote, but I would be the sidekick completely. But if Austin lost, I would probably get a pretty good edit. I would probably get like a great edit, and it might seem like, say again.
Yeah.
It might seem like once I left, then things fell apart for us.
But you voted for him.
I did, because I was like, Austin's my friend. That's not how the game should be played. That's not like, I'll take the bullet, whatever.
Yeah.
I thought Austin played a good game too. But I considered that pressure on me, and I thought, oh my God, every other person is to a greater or lesser degree making these kind of calculations. And a lot of them don't have this like, kind of like anti-competitive, desire to be loyal to their friends and to support the people they played with. A lot of people are just going to be like, oh, well, let's do it. Let's do what's best for me. I don't care about the game.
Yeah. Can you map this to 46? Because that was probably one of the more recent controversial jury opinions.
I would really hate to like psychoanalyze, people on that jury because I really like a lot of that cast. But I think like let's take an uncontroversial one. Let's take
Okay.
Tiffany and Kenzie, right? Tiffany gets back to the jury and she finds out that Kenzie had planned to betray her, long before Tiffany had ever thought about betraying Kenzie. So her ally, her friend, beat her out. Tiffany's got a couple options. Tiffany can can be mad. Tiffany and vote for Charlie or Ben. She can be neutral, or she can recognize that, gee, if Kenzie wins, it makes me look a lot better. Because then I was fooled by the best of the best. I was working with the winner. I was working with the person who dominated our season. If Charlie wins, then I was fooled by a runner-up. I was fooled by this nobody, who was inconsequential. So there's kind of an editing incentive for Tiffany to go one way.
Yeah. But how do you know that Tiffany didn't have the same thought process that you have of like, hey, but you know what? This is my friend who's there and I got to do the right thing. And that might be how other people are thinking, but I'm actually going to vote the way that you're supposed to vote.
She probably did. The point is not like this was a corrupted result. The point is that there is this alternative game that goes on in the jury that puts into question, in my mind, any winners of Survivor.
Okay. Do you have a fix? What would you do different?
What they used to do: sequester the jury, or don't allow.
No, they
jury
never
talk.
Sequestered the jury.
You're telling me at the beginning of the game? I got this from Tyson. So maybe
what did he say? What did he say?
He said that when he first played, they had this buzzer, and they would hit the buzzer whenever anybody started talking game, and they'd be like, "You cannot talk about game. You cannot discuss the game."
Yeah. I've never heard that before. I'm not saying that Tyson is wrong about that, and maybe that in Survivor Token Sheens they were like particularly strict for whatever reason. They were like, because there's been a lot of over 20 some odd years, there's been a lot of different people that like run the Ponderosa ship. It's not necessarily like it's been one specific way. So there's probably like some Ponderosas that are more loosey goosey and some that are more strict.
Well, maybe Tyson, it wasn't a vision for the past. It was a vision of the ideal future. But I think they
Tyson was seeing like Survivor 60.
He's kind of a clairvoyant guy. He's had some good reads out there. I think that you need to sequester the jury, kind of like in a law court. When the people leave the courtroom, they're not allowed to talk to each other, and they're certainly not allowed to talk about the case. So you could talk to each other at Ponderosa. I mean, it would be pretty atomized if you couldn't. Yeah. But like they can't have this like this meta analysis going on, in my opinion. I think that's a way to help.
I get that. I think in a perfect world, I think that's how you would do it. I heard Jeff talk about this on the On Fire podcast, and I thought this made some sense of that. Yeah. Jeff said that it would be cruel to not let the players talk to each other after they get out of the game. That's part of the healing process of that they're back and reintegrated with the players that they were in the game with. How would you feel about that?
I came out of the game of Survivor and I didn't talk to anyone I played with for 3 to 4 months. I self-consciously.
But you're atypical.
No, I am, for sure. But one of the things they'll always tell you is that you're like you're co-bonded with these people. I forget the word, but you are like imbricated with them, and they're the only people that are going to understand your experience, and you're going to fly out to see them every weekend, and like you guys are like going to talk to each other every day on the phone. And I was like, oh, that sounds really weird. Like that sounds really unhealthy, And it's like, it is going back to Ponderosa and having like a week-long celebration of why you lost the game and like hyper-diagnosing it with these other people that are about to leave and you're going to have to chase around the country. Is that the healthy way to process Survivor? I don't know. I mean, there's certainly no, there's no empirical data on other approaches. So I'm not convinced necessarily by this Jeff's argument. But even still, I mean, I hate to say it, we've got a television show to produce. Like you guys can talk about the game and break it down, but no talking about the winner, no talking about who should win, no talking about no advocacy, as little as possible is my sense.
I agree with that. I think that they should, that as much as possible. I know people are going to sneak away, but I don't know how much actual like game talk is going, if it's like constant or if it's like here or there. But yeah, I think that they should probably try to cut that back if they can.
And it's like people are like, "Oh, it couldn't be done." Like, what are you talking about? You spent a week at Ponderosa not speaking to each other at all beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
Like it could easily be done. It's already proof of concept.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, that's my gripe about the jury. And I forget how we got onto this.
Yeah. So
Um,
is the only way to then navigate that is to make sure you go to the end with the goatiest goats that you can.
Honestly, probably. Or the alternative is to go with a really tight group that has played an insular game together, right? Because then, you know, the people
Gotta pick
on
one
the
of
jury
us.
don't really have a stake in the decision. Like they just got dominated. They just got whipped.
Yeah.
So you're going to the end with a tight group that they, that kind of factors don't go into play with. That's something that I was counting on out there, Rob. I mean, I kind of the opposite of a lot of these nerds. I was respected, but I wasn't liked. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was respected enough on a gameplay
You can
level
win
that
with
I would have
that.
gotten. What's up?
You can win with that.
No, absolutely, absolutely. But I knew that it meant that, like, I really had some distance from these people's like narrative storylines, and like it didn't really affect them if I had won. And that could be like a plus, or it could be a con. But yeah, I had something with the jury that is kind of escaping me. The people have been saying recently that is just not true, and it's um what do you think, Rob? What do you think about this idea of like the last minute reveal? That like you could, and it came into play here. I mean, Andy got nervous about it and he spilled the beans and
Yeah.
he got cut, which I don't think is what really happened, but we can talk about it. What do you think of this last minute reveal? Is this effective? Is this a pipe dream?
What do you mean the last minute reveal?
Like the idea that you could play this covert undercover game that but nobody else
You
knows.
say at the final tribal council
Yeah.
that Andy is going to then, unmask at the final tribal council. I mean, look, you've been a juror in the new era. I think it is not enough time in that final tribal council to be able to explain things. And I think that also that if it does not line up with people's perceptions of like, wait, Andy, what are you talking? Like, that's not what happened. That's not how I experience things. And even if, Andy's version of events might be true, or at least true from Andy's perspective, as far as his confessionals back that up, like there might not be enough time. And I kind of think that you have to be able to like breadcrumb these jurors a little bit, but maybe Andy did too much.
Oh yeah, I mean, maybe he did too much for sure, and maybe it would have been effective. But like from my perspective, the thing about like the final tribal council is that you offer every person like a little bit of wiggle room, right? Like, oh, maybe I'm underestimating you in this way. Like maybe you weren't just athletic, or maybe maybe you did have a social game to back up your strategy. Like I'm willing to explore certain areas that I've already I've stereotyped your game, and there are certain areas where I'm willing to give you a little bit of give.
Mm-hmm.
But those areas are contingent on what I already understand about you. If you want to go into final tribal council and really explode the stereotype, every way, being like, I was different than you thought. The only way you can do that is if they feel they don't know anything about you. Kind of like Christy on Survivor Australia.
Yes, I bet.
Nobody knew anything about it.
Andy referenced her in the exit interview too.
But misguidedly, because for her, they had no stereotype. They were like, "Who is this enigma?" And so then she could say anything. Andy, in contrast,
she seems pretty excited and believable.
What do you mean?
She just like had a lot of energy about I did this and I did this and I did this. Like,
oh yeah, exactly.
Let her cook.
The thing for Andy is that everybody knows him already. He's already got the stereotype, right? He can't, like, everyone has seen this, day one on the beach or day 3. You can't come into Final Tribal like that and just rewrite history and rewrite what people know about you. You have to start that earlier. And that's why, people like Jake, I think Jake's got to get a lot of props, for really realizing the theater of the new era on a way that like
theater
nobody
kid.
else did. Yeah, theater kid. I mean, it was part of his moves. He was like, we can't tell D because it needs to be theatrical. Like, wow, that's kind of like a game-changing realization, for somebody to actually say, like, the presentation is everything.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why fire making has become so, like, important, because it's this last chance to reset your stereotype, to change your image a little bit, even if the move is totally inconsequential.
You said about Andy that you're not sure that him revealing too much to Rachel was what ultimately happened to him.
Yeah, I am not sure.
What do you
I
think is an alternative theory?
so the last night's episode, a really good episode. I really like this season. I think it's the best season of the new era. But
Better than your own season.
I do. I think it's better than my own season. I think my season is the second best because I think that 46, despite big flashy moves, never came together narratively. Like it never really cohered to anything.
Yeah.
But I think this season is probably better than my season.
Will you be kicked out of the 45 group chat for publicly saying that 47 is a better season?
Well, I probably will. But
or is there a new group chat started today that's called 45 minus Drew?
Maybe I'm trying to play for 50. I'm like trying to get into the 47 group chat. I'm like, bring me in as the honorary 19th, the alternate. Who knows? There's layers to my machinations.
Pretty good.
But probably I just think it's a slightly better season. But one of the things this season has done really well, and it was on prime display during this episode, is these amazing emotional conversations that are so expressive, right? Like editing is on point. I mean, watching Survivor 47 editing wise is a tour de force. I mean, you're watching like an Oscar winner because you have the back-to-back of Sam and Rachel having this really honest, or at least on Sam's part, like face-to-face about like, this was a misconnection. It's never going to work. Like, I'm sorry. And Rachel's crying, but she's faking it. And then so expressive, but she's faking it. And then in contrast, you have this interaction with Teenie and Genevieve, which was really like chef's kiss. I mean, like Genevieve is so shocked that she just admits it openly. And like, I'm a sitting duck, and Teenie's like face of shame looking down. I mean, it was so poignant. And then there was kind of like a re-acknowledgement of these relationships at Final Tribal. But you know whose relationship was never acknowledged? Andy's. Andy's ostensibly sitting there on the beach. He's one of the boys, but he never speaks. You just assume he's there somewhere behind the camera. When Andy, talks at tribal council about his relationship with Rachel, whereas it's taken seriously with Sam, it's taken, with Genevieve and Teenie is taken seriously. Andy's kind of gets laughs from the jury, and like they show the laughs from the jury. So you're kind of meant to like wonder a little bit, What I see this Andy Rachel interaction boiling down to is kind of resentment. I see Andy being very confident about, the kind of game he's played, and he's taken out Rachel, and he's like, it's okay. You're the most important person to me. And that's annoying. If Rachel thinks she can beat both Sam and Andy, she's probably a lot more annoyed by Andy's approach than she is by Sam's. But then additionally, Andy tells Rachel, oh, you're the most important person out here to me. Okay, that's exactly who I want as a juror, rather than Sam, who doesn't even really like me. If Andy's the most important person to me and he's a goat I can beat anyways, well, screw him. Out you go. So how strategic was it? I don't know. There's a real attempt right now in the edit, and probably maybe because it's true, to like pump Andy up. Andy is a strategic beast. Andy needs to get taken out because he's a strategic threat. But Rachel's reasons for taking out Andy are very vague. They're like, ooh, maybe he's somebody, where Sam is like good at this, and he'll be bad for this. Andy's like, I don't know. So I think that's probably what happened.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding what you're saying, that Rachel taking out Andy is a little bit more like Tony taking out Trish, of like, okay, this is going to be somebody who is going to be a vote for me on the jury, somebody that has seen my game, that can understand my game, and probably won't, like, as a super fan of the game, isn't going to vote for Teenie or Sue.
Well, that's the first part of it. And the second part is that I think that Andy kind of went about it a little clunkily. It seemed like Rachel was annoyed by his approach.
I think so too. I think a little bit.
Confessions of relationship with her were not taken seriously by her and by the jury. So it seems like maybe there would have been some friction there. But I think that's probably why Andy got taken out. It'd be interesting to hear Rachel's side eventually when she gets to sit down for these long conversations. But
Drew, a lot of discussion on the internets this past couple of days over Rachel, and it has varied from anywhere from Dom Abate has called her the best player of all time.
Oh, I saw that.
Yes.
I think they're friends in real life, though. I think he's just
they are. They're in like some. I think they started playing online poker together during the pandemic, and so there's a fondness there. Others have sort of been poo-pooing Rachel and where she's at. What's been your sober assessment of Rachel as a player this season and potential winner?
What do I think of Rachel? No holds bar. What do you like? What do you got to watch out for if she's on 50? Um, Rachel is kind of a weird player. And I think Rachel and Genevieve are both like, the titans of the season, and they're both weird for different reasons. But Rachel is like a master of the little moves, right? Like she makes all these like small little opportune calculations that are just so perfect, that are so like, neat and tidy. Like going and slipping down on the beach to listen to the conversation. Great heads up game awareness, the ability to do that. So smart. And then on the really big level, Rachel's great. I mean, finding all the advantages, deploying them correctly. She's a master of these little things, and she's highly competent in these big things. I mean, certainly we had a season of failure, so the big things are not easy to do. And yet somehow the sum of the parts is a little bit less than it should be on paper, right? If you're a master at the little things and the big things, you should just be the GOAT. Like you should run the game. And yet Rachel is constantly being left out of votes. There are constantly like cross wires in the social game. There are like little strategic things that don't work out her way. And it's kind of baffling because it's like, how do you have someone this good who, is like on 50% of the votes? And so I just feel like there's some kind of like disconnect with applying all of these things that she's really, really good at to the game. I mean, like, why is that? Like if she's truly like as good socially as it seems to me, like, why is she falling through the cracks? I think it could be kind of like a Caleb situation on my season where somebody is just so like transparently, possessing these qualities.
Yeah.
And possesses them in maybe in a way that's not reassuring, that's very forthright, then it's kind of really easy to target that.
Yeah.
And so like if we see all these great things about Rachel, and Rachel really is this great, because I think she is, everyone else sees it too. And so these little subtle moves are not like subtle at all. In fact, actually, they're kind of like rubbing in your face. They're like, oh, I'm a professional. I'm a specialist.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to have put it. I'm glad you brought Caleb into this because as you started talking about Genevieve and Rachel, I think that the Caleb idea applies more in terms of Genevieve, and not just as they're both Canadians, but I feel like that they seem, both of them, Caleb and Genevieve, like such like a polished package of like,
Oh yeah.
they have it all. And like, I think that there's like a little bit more of a like, and for some different reasons, I think that, that Caleb's charm is like, very, noticeable to anybody that like encounters him. I think that Genevieve has that a little bit, but also then has, bouts of lacks of confidence, but then also like is very capable in all sorts of way. So I think that Genevieve and Caleb is a little bit of a better one-to-one. But for Rachel, that I almost feel like that she is not quite a Caleb in that I don't think that Rachel is somebody who pops. I doubt that there were a lot of people, and if you go back to the preseason, who were really paying attention to Rachel as being a person to watch out for. But I love what you said about Rachel being the master of the little moves. And I wonder if that, like, the little moves that she has made, like, ended up being noticeable enough to people where people were sort of like, okay, watch out for her. I think that something that I'd love to talk to Rachel about this was when she tried to steal the rice and got busted. That I wonder if that was a thing that really put her out there in a lot of people's minds of like, ooh, that was sneaky. That was a good idea. Look what she can do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was, and there are a lot of like little, interactions and challenges like that that people are funny. I don't know how serious they're taken, but I'm sure that like at least put her on the radar. Winning that rock thing to get the advantage compared to the other two. Like I'm sure that is kind of like heightening the profile.
And she got clocked by the Genevieves of the world who were like, okay, that's the kind of person that we're watching out for. I think the Caroline also
Caroline too.
was, another shark on this season who sort of like clocked, okay, that Rachel is somebody to watch out for. But I feel like that Rachel was sort of like an antithesis of a Caleb type in that she seems so, plain and somebody who is not the biggest personality, and that it felt like that was great camouflage for her. I think that she had been very concerned about her threat level throughout the game. It just so happened that, she ended up having to do so many things that, then her threat level just has kept escalating. And I've been very impressed with the way she's been having to tap dance through this post merge
Oh yeah.
to get to this position.
Well, there is a way in which playing from the bottom is easier than playing from the top.
For sure.
Because when you're playing from the bottom, you've got like two options and it's really clear what they are. And you can just, go head first for them. Whereas playing for the top is a little bit vaguer. I mean, there's an infinity of options. It's really hard to know what to do. And when I say Rachel's kind of like Caleb, I don't mean that like they have the same personality, you have the same drive to be liked by them. Like that you do for Caleb. You really want Caleb to like you. It seems like Genevieve probably is the same way with Teeny. What I mean is that not being able to control people's perception of you, or not being able to like hold cards close to your chest about what you're good at is a detriment to your game, is a flaw in your game. And when Rachel walks into the merge being relatively unassuming, right? She's not like this big, like outspoken character, even in confessional, she's very low key. But when Genevieve, Caroline, Sam all immediately clock that about you, and you're like, under the radar, you're not under the radar. I mean, it's a flaw.
Drew, another thing about Rachel, and I saw this a little bit in the pre-merge, that she was on a lot of those puzzles in the first half of the season in the pre-merge. And I think it was also noticed by people how good Rachel is at doing the puzzles. So I think that might have also been something that was on people's minds, where people who are out there looking for, all right, who are the threats? I think that was something else that put Rachel out there on their radar.
That's really astute. I think that I didn't notice that, but that absolutely played a role.
Yeah. And I think it's been very impressive for her. And going back to what you said about playing from the bottom, like there's two types of people that are on the bottom. There are the people that are on the bottom who are everybody is trying to get out, and there are the people that are at the bottom that nobody is trying to get out. And Rachel, I think, has had like this incredibly hard degree of difficulty to what she's been having to do, because she's been like on the bottom at times and everybody is targeting her.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like Rachel like is between a rock and a hard place like every day since like week 3. So like major credit has to go to her for playing that like Mike
Holloway.
Yeah. Mike Holloway style game. Really hard. I certainly couldn't do it. And then like, as you'll talk to her, I think a lot of like physical training went into that. And maybe she mentioned this pregame that like she, had been hitting the gym prepping for literally a year. So it's very well deserved.
Yeah. Now, can I ask you, so just go back to Rachel, and I feel stupid for not bringing this up earlier, that she was an alternate on your season, right? Was she at Ponderosa with you guys?
No, I think TYH was or Tiana was the alternate. I think she was an alternate for 46.
Okay.
So I don't know anything about that. I know that she was an alternate with somebody who's on 48. That has kind of been like, implicitly released or whatever on Twitter.
Yeah.
So I didn't know anything for Rachel. Obviously, you do have kind of a bond with your alternate though, because they're like, they're the also ran. They were there. So like Tiana, I know a lot of people like were rooting for her for my season. But there's an advantage to being the alternate. There's a big advantage. I mean, it's time to start targeting the alternates, because they know how to prep for Ponderosa.
Yeah.
They have connections with people who have already played, so they can kind of get the inside scoop. I mean, I don't know if Tiana did, but
I bet Rachel and Tiana, and I bet neither of them said that they were alternates.
It's a good point. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess there's no way to suss it out.
And Austin, he was an alternate, but he had not been to Fiji previously. He was an alternate the rare alternate who gets through.
Yeah. That's true. He got pulled up. I don't know how you target the alternates. I guess it would be impossible short of a break.
Maybe like, can you like on the first day of Ponderosa, like, hey, do you know where the water fountain is? And it's like, how did they?
Yeah.
They know. Look, they're not lost. They know their way around here.
Yeah, suspicious. Wow, it adds a new layer to it. But I would also target anybody who's really close with like former players. Some like Kelly came and she's like, "Oh, I know Parvati." If Rachel mentions
Bruce knew Kane.
Kane?
Yeah.
What about
Survivor 44?
Oh, like if you know Kane, like if you're Bruce?
Yeah.
Hey,
he name dropped all the survivors he knew.
Yeah, I don't know why they clowned on him for that. Like, of course he knows. What are you talking about? But yeah, it's a huge advantage.
That's what Emily was saying.
Oh, and she was right. At the time, I was like, what, once you're out here for a few days, he was out here for like 8 hours. He doesn't know anything. Not true. Playing Survivor again is a huge advantage. You know what to look for in so many different
Yeah.
tells. You know how production works. It's a big play. And even the alternate gets some of that information. So I wonder how effective it was, for Rachel, at least at the beginning, to kind of like orient herself.
I want to ask you about the Tuku alliance. And it seemed like there was a point in the season where it looked like to us, all right, here we go. Tuku steamroll. Here it comes. They just watched Survivor 45. This is the new read before. And Tuku, Gabe, Sue, Caroline, Kyle, they're about to run the table. It didn't happen. Did they blow it?
They totally blew it. It was embarrassing too, because they were basically the read before. I mean, you had at 8, you had 4 people in your alliance, and then you had one person who had no choice but to work with you, right? Emily, slash Genevieve. So they had it. They had it. And they screwed it up for, I think, really interesting reasons. Total blow. I mean, but look, we're at the final 4, and they're not around anymore, and they haven't been around at the
Only
final
Sue.
6.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Sue's hanging on there. She's just been forgotten. She's just lingering around the island, pacing back and forth, out of date. And I think it speaks to kind of the like viscosity or like the inertia, the staying power of what I'll call like the public. When like Genevieve's idol, let's use that as a test case. If Genevieve were to go to Rachel and say, I have this idol, or Sue, I have this idol, nobody would believe her. Right. But when Teeny comes from Genevieve to say Genevieve has an idol, it's true. Right. Facts take on like this additional authority, or like vibes take on this additional authority when conveyed like second or third hand, because they become part of the public. They become part of the rumors. And really good Survivor players kind of slowly, like Genevieve with Teeny, kind of slowly and tacitly control like the rumors in the discourse. It's like a very subtle way to affect your moves that really does work. The point is, though, is that this public doesn't actually matter. People play the game based on these public vibes, but they are inconsequential, right? And so when you're like Gabe, when you're Caroline, when you're Kyle, you just have to look together and say, well, wait a second. We just go on the public, we don't need to pay attention to the public. We don't need to pay attention to the fact that everyone's targeting us. We have the numbers to make it such that it doesn't matter. But they didn't. They kind of caved to it. And it was really interesting, because if they had just ignored what the vibes were, like the kind of current of the game, they would have cruised through to probably at least the final 6 before Gabe got sniped by Caroline. So it was unfortunate, and it kind of speaks to the fact there are a lot of different levels to play the game of Survivor. There's the narrative level, which people get caught in. Because it's TV and you're going to see yourself, and it's supposed to be this journey of self-discovery. There's like the kind of like the public level, which is like that's how the jury is deciding, that's how I need to pay attention to. But then there are kind of like the brute factual realities of the game and realities of the numbers. And if like this was like a tribe of like chimpanzees, what would the higher power structure be? And that's the level that you really need to pay attention to for like kind of the micro moves of the merge. And they ignored it. That's my assessment.
Wow. I've never heard the chimpanzee level of Survivor.
Oh yeah, you got to get on this, Rob. You got to get on this.
See, I feel like that the chimpanzee level of Survivor, I feel like that was like the old era, but you think it's alive in the new era?
Oh, it's not an issue of like, it's not an issue of like, are we going to go back to like the primitive, the thing? Are we going to be cavemen? It's like it's a biological thing. We are mammals. We, anthropologically, we exist on, like simian power structures. And the thing about 8 power structures is that they're constantly contested. They're contested by violence. They're contested by shows of force. But once they form, they're extremely durable. Everyone has an intuitive sense of what the power structure is, and they're forced to either respect it or overthrow it. And so basically, what I'm arguing here is there's kind of like a mismatch between this like this very human sense of, oh, here's what the social group is saying, and like here's how we need to interact, and the kind of more fundamental recognition that like we have numbers, we have strength, we have power, that nothing else matters.
Yeah. People might think that this sounds a little off the wall what you're saying, but I feel like that, I think that this speaks to the true nature of Survivor. And I think that why it's been such an enduring concept where over 24 years that people really resonate with this format, because that there is like this big part of this that's like innate in us, like not just being voted out of the tribe, but also this idea of, like seeking power in like, okay, keeping allies around and, sticking with my voting structure and trying to overthrow something that isn't working for us, or somebody who thinks they're in power and we're going to overthrow them with our votes put together. Like that's fun, really how we got to this point in the first place.
Totally. And I'll even take it a step farther, Rob. It sounds like maybe I'm sounding like a loony. So you tell me if I am, and I can rescue myself. But there's been a lot of anthropological research about this idea of the scapegoat, right?
Okay.
And these people, these thinkers, they argue, and it's taken very seriously, that societies form through scapegoating somebody who is outside the society, and that when you make that boundary, when you make that line between us and them, then it allows for us to really obtain cohesion. And so the origin of society is the scapegoating of somebody who's outside of society. And like, that's messy. That's really ugly. I hope that isn't true. But I will tell you, when I watch Survivor, a lot of times tight alliances form because they find somebody to put outside the alliance and to to demonize. And I think if you are a really savvy Survivor player, you recognize a scapegoat when you see one. And that's kind of a way to build groups. The trouble with Tuku is that the scapegoat was inside the group.
Mm-hmm.
So like
Kyle.
If Kyle's the scapegoat that causes you to form your thing, Kyle and TK, well, you've brought him along. So it really weakens the integrity of your group.
Mm-hmm. And the other problem is that then, the audience ends up becoming very like sympathetic to the person who you're scapegoating. And then you end up having a very unfavorable edit in terms of like the television show that people are watching at home. So you feel like you're like, okay, I'm crushing it. I'm killing this thing. And then ultimately people are like, we hate you.
Well, is that like,
unless you win,
is that true though? Because like, let's go back in the day, like One World. What was her name? Christina.
Yeah.
Total scapegoat, was bullied the whole season. Even on season 40, even on the dynamic on season 40, on like Edge of Extinction, there was major scapegoating.
Yeah.
Right. Typically the edit just doesn't, hides this fact. That's how games are played. Now, recently, the Survivor editors, I think, have really made an effort to be very fair. They want to portray people as they were, things how they happened. They don't want to do like the Franken cuts or whatever. I certainly felt like season 45 was very accurate in its portrayals, with the exception of Bruce. But even Bruce that was a scapegoat. So they're giving a lot of more.
Bruce, you think should have been shown more positively?
Say again.
You think that Bruce should have been shown and depicted more positively?
I think that Bruce's initial tribe really hated him. And I think that a lot of us who met him at the merge had no issue with Bruce. We thought he was a really nice guy. And they kind of just stuck to that initial narrative. And so I felt badly for him.
Yeah.
But other than that, very accurate editing season. So the edit likes to kind of aid these underdogs, likes to kind of like show like, oh, Jake and Carolyn and Ben, like they're really good people. And like, they should be in it, even if they're not, Artini. But it's not factual. And like back in the day, you would have just dunked on them. Anyways,
just to stay with Tuku for a minute. Okay. It was kind of a hard situation where, for whatever reason, Kyle, who was at the bottom of Tuku, felt like, okay, this is my turn. I need to take out Gabe. At the same time, Caroline also seemed to jump ship. I think what we don't know is, did Caroline read where the numbers were going and then jump on board with that? Or did Caroline simultaneously make the same move that that Kyle was making to go after Gabe?
Oh, I think for sure the latter. Like, I think it was a combined group that everyone except for, Sue realized like, oh, we have to turn on each other. We have to acknowledge the fact that everyone's looking at us. But they didn't. And so it was unfortunate. I think that if 3 of the 4 people had held firm, like if you just gotten Kyle and Gabe together and be like, we don't need them, that would have happened. That would have been very attainable. Sue was already on board. Is Carolyn going to jump ship after that? Is Genevieve going to jump ship when they're the group of 3 doesn't like her, doesn't want to work with her, doesn't trust her? No,
Yeah.
So it was a real miscalculation. And I think a lot of people, Kyle, Gabe, Carolyn, succumbed to the pressure simultaneously.
I will say that I thought that Caroline was set up pretty well and in a good spot to win following that. And if it was not for the duplicity of Operation Italy, that I feel like that Caroline or Rachel winning immunity there, I think that Caroline comes out of that pretty good.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's always fun in the season when you have like two players who are the same. So you can just kind of like mark them, and you can track how they do differently. And you can say, wow, the advantages were really, made a difference on this one. And Caroline and Rachel are such similar players. I mean, they're such similar players. They play the exact same kind of way. They have the same demeanor. And Caroline fell short. So, like she was in a great position to win. I mean, she had a lot of momentum. She had a lot of the soft skills to get there. Coalition building, maybe even to a degree that Rachel didn't have. But Rachel just was clutch in challenges and clutch. She clutched on the big stuff, wins immunity, finds advantages, and that supersedes.
Are there any other players that you thought were particularly interesting this season?
Yeah, I think there are three interesting players this season. There are some players who are interesting, like as test cases, like, gee, don't freaking do that. But Genevieve, Rachel, and Andy, interesting players, each bringing something a little bit new to the table, each with some flaws. I think outside of that group, it's worth touching on like Gabe, because Gabe was like Gabe kind of failed, right? Gabe kind of reminded me of Tevin in a way that they're like, it's such a big game and such like a, perfuming sense of self-confidence.
Yeah.
Come to absolutely nothing.
I gave Gabe I started after that season, my inaugural Tevin Davis Award for the best episode of the season was episode 1.
Yeah.
Gabe was the winner of that.
Oh, he had a good episode 1. I don't even remember.
Yeah, he was all over the place looking for the idol.
Oh yeah, and then he recovered.
Yeah, it was
That
like,
was
wow, this guy, and he was talking about Russell Hantz, and it was like, okay, he put together this alliance.
Yeah.
Like, here we go. Gabe really and then the second episode was the TK boot. So it really seemed like that Gabe is like maybe the star of the season.
Well, there's something to be said for endurance, which is that a lot of people can do that at the beginning, but can't do that for like 23 days. And Russell was amazing because he could. Russell could go, that was just who Russell was. He could sleepwalk and do it. But people begin to burn out. Sam's confessionals get a little bit less witty after week 1. Gabe is a little bit less aggressive just because he loses steam after the pre-merge. But Gabe was like, I don't know. He just was so obsessed with his vision of how he was going to play and how he was going to treat people and where they fit in that he wasn't flexible enough to make it through. So it's worth commenting on him. Andy, really interesting player. What do you think of Andy, Rob?
I mean, I've known Andy for a long time. Andy was a person who had called into the patron shows for years and years. So I have an affinity for Andy for sure. I think he was such an interesting player because that he is like a super analytical person, but in a way that's, and I think that you are as well, like incredibly analytical, but also that Andy, I think, is like very in touch with his emotions and his feelings in a way that I think that typically the really analytical players are not. And so I think that Andy, what is so fascinating about him is that he's like very feeling, but also at the same time, like a real like thinker about the game.
Yes, completely agree. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head there with a big part of what I was going to say, but I think a lot of people in the fandom or in the comments, whatever, misunderstand who Andy is as a player. Andy is first and foremost an emotional player, right? He's not actually that analytic. I mean, he is analytical for sure, but like the analysis is like super structure. Like the analysis is something we like put on the end to like justify our decisions. Really an emotional player. He's playing for recognition. He's playing for redemption. He's playing because Survivor is like the conclusion to his narrative of his 20s and 30s. And it's gonna capstone who he is and who he's become. And the fact that, he's put himself into a successful position and Survivor is going to prove all that. And then when that, that proof is so jeopardized, like it was at the beginning of the game, you really get put into like a survivor fight or flight mentality, not just because like I want to win the game, but like, oh my God, my entire self-perception is riding on doing well
Hmm.
in Survivor. I think Andy really put that level of stock into the experience.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that players like subtly clock this and they tell Andy like, oh, the jury isn't going to respect you. You're not going to be able to get votes. You're not going to be able to have played this kind of game. And it's like the driving motivation for him to make moves or to like treat social relations at every turn, even though like maybe it should be. Maybe logically he doesn't need to explain to Rachel why she should vote for him. Maybe he doesn't need to do all this stuff. I find that really fascinating, that insecurity really fascinating. And it's why I think that like Survivors, like some of the casting mission might be a little like not what I would go for, in the sense that like they're looking for like complete people, right? We're looking, who you are, you're living your life, you're totally autonomous. But what you really need are people who are like deeply emotionally complex, like Q, like Andy, who are not going to behave rationally, who are going to behave emotionally,
Hmm.
and create these fascinating game states. I've been thinking about chess recently a little bit, Rob, because it's the World Chess Championships that just ended.
Yeah.
Kukesh won. But if you get like two like supercomputers to play chess, the games are very boring because the supercomputers will just make the optimal move every time. It doesn't matter. When the machines make a mistake, like when you have them make the wrong move, then the games become these amazing, fascinating complications. And so like if we just have like a second chance type thing where it's like everyone is making the optimal move and it just like cruises on, it's relatively uninteresting. But if you have people like Andy, you have people like Q who are making emotional decision making when they don't realize it, when they're not self-aware to it, then it becomes like really beautiful. And I think that's why the fans in a big way have responded so positively to Andy.
Yeah. That's really well put. How do you screen for that?
Oh,
What are
I
you
mean,
looking
they have
for?
like all. Oh yeah,
What are you looking for? Like what to find that?
they have all these psychological tests and that they can go through, and it comes through in like the interviews, especially like I think I'm kind of that same archetype. Also went
Yeah.
out in sixth to Q and Andy, but like I'm a complicated guy.
Yeah.
And some people are very smooth. A lot of people who play Survivor are like pretty single minded, pretty simple, and not in a bad way, but it's just like psychologically. Um, I had a great. I think that casting is under a little bit of strain here. I've noticed recently that like a lot of the men are kind of like nerdy, they're kind of
Hmm.
dorks. They're like the so-called losers, myself included. And I'm wondering like why this is, Rob. And I think a big part of it is that a lot of like the like jockier men, like a lot of the like stronger dudes, like have political opinions the show doesn't want to platform.
Hmm.
And I think that kind of screens out a lot of these like these macho men, or like the truck drivers that people are always asking for. Um, and I think that the solution to this is not to just cast like the HR types, but like to find people who like really don't fit into molds, who break archetypes, who are very complex and nuanced and many faceted. Maybe people who like don't even know who they are, don't have that confirmed sense of identity, but like have a lot of different jockeying things that will act out.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a departure from some of the program currently.
Right. I definitely think that what you're saying makes a lot of sense in terms of the people that you're looking for. But I do hope that we get to a point where everybody's like political view does not become like the defining characteristic of people, and maybe the show is as that becomes maybe less of a thing that's sort of like front and center for people, then maybe that is less of a dividing line in terms of like who we're looking at for casting.
Oh yeah, I mean, like completely agree. Wholesale. And I guess we'll just have to, as commentators, we'll just have to see. We'll have to see what happens. I mean, that's a little above our pay grade, but
Yeah.
I think it's a factor in the casting at least.
All right. Well, one more person to ask you about. Okay.
Yeah,
Rome was an
yeah.
interesting personality to be a part of this season. What did you think of Rome?
Well, I'll tell you, Rome is like the gift that keeps on giving, Rob. I just learned this recently. I don't know. Did you know this, that Rome faked his death?
I did hear this.
Yeah,
Yes. I did.
that's
Honestly, I didn't look
crazy.
too much into it, but I have heard about this.
Yeah, I just heard about it. He was like a rap battler, and he faked his death so he didn't have to go to this rap competition.
Hmm.
Very interesting. You're kind of a rap battler in a way. you know?
What, in like having RHAP?
Yeah.
Mhm.
RHAP. I don't know how do you pronounce it? You say it like that?
I mean, I say RHAP typically,
RHAP or
but you
RHAP.
could, listen, anybody who wants to talk about it, we're happy to have them mention it.
Oh, the rap battle, the Rome.
No,
I think that,
RHAP. Please
oh, an
mention it
RHAP.
anywhere.
I
If
think
you
that
could
this
wear a T-shirt next time you go on Jeopardy, that would be huge.
Oh yeah, I will plug it on my
Hmm.
promo interviews. I think it's a great opportunity for you, Rob, to kind of do something a little bit new and some the investigative reporting wing of your
Hmm.
podcast,
Yeah.
like of your outlet.
True crime documentary.
I think we need to send a reporter up there to wherever Rome is from to New York, and we need to get to the bottom of, is he dead? Did he?
I think he's alive. Yeah.
I think he's alive too, but I mean there are conflicting reports. It's
Did
important that
he
we investigate
fall
this.
down a well?
Yeah. Yeah, so Rome was a funny guy. I think, prime example of like some psychological complexity. Gee, I mean, he was pretty annoying though. I wouldn't have wanted to be out there with him. Like,
Yeah, I think that was a lot. But you know what? I think it's so fascinating that Genevieve loved him.
yes, that was kind of, I think that Rome is very like entertaining. I think that Rome is somebody that is kind of like funny to talk to and to watch perform. And
Hmm.
I wouldn't be shocked if for Genevieve, who was a pretty cool cucumber and like didn't really want to put herself out there that much emotionally, if
Yeah.
Rome was like a great sidekick to like
And a
take
great
attention
shield.
and a great shield. I'm sure that was a part of it.
Hmm.
Rome, again, kind of like Q in the sense that they have like overriding concerns that condition the way they're going to play the game. So for Q, it was control. Q always had to be in control or the feel that he was in control of the moves. And when this was no longer possible, Q began to make moves against his allies for the sole reason of having control. Because if he couldn't control moves against the opposition, then at least he can control his own, combustion in the game. And eventually he burned out at that, like, I'm going to quit, because that was his last way to have control. It's like, I can
Hmm.
still control who goes home if I go home. In the same type of way, Rome had to be the center of attention. Like, just had to have everything about him, had to be the focus, had to be the one up. And it became less advantageous to be the center of attention, right? Because people don't want to work with you.
Yeah.
People like Genevieve aren't going to be magnetized to you. And also, as there became a lot more people to compete with, he just got spread too thin, and everyone was like, nobody had a sense of who he was, and he got burned.
At that same tribal council that Rome sat in Jeff's chair, that there was also a moment where that you would not have sat in Jeff's chair.
Oh, the disrespect! The disrespect is unbelievable. Why did Jeff let that happen, man? I mean,
I think he knew he was going home. I think he thought that, like, oh, like, watch this. Like, he'll be
oh
so,
yeah,
the overconfidence will be dripping off of him, and then he'll be voted out.
I know, but they kind of played it like it was cutesy. I was like, the audacity of this guy to like go
Mm-hmm.
sit in Jeff's chair, which by the way doesn't even look very comfortable. It's
No,
like,
it's just a rock.
yeah, you're gonna walk all the way over on television to like go sit on the same chair. I mean, Jeff
Mm-hmm.
should get a pillow. I think it's only fair. He's in the
I think in
executive producer.
46, I think when he was like eating the popcorn, I think he did get a pillow because he was trying to be comfortable watching the fireworks at that tribal council. But at that tribal council where Rome sat in Jeff's chair, then
Yeah.
there was also a moment where Andy and Teeny and Caroline had gotten a three-way shared advantage. And I think you even commented about this on Twitter. And they gave it back. They said, okay, we're here to play. We're here to burn the three-way shared advantage together.
Yeah.
What was your thought on that?
It was really interesting. I think that a great comparison would be season 27, Blood versus Water, because then you go to these, I don't remember what it was called, redemption duels,
Yep.
duels of redemption, something like that. Maybe not.
I think it was a Redemption Island duel.
Yeah, Redemption Island. That's what it's called. So you go to these, and there are clues publicly given out, and everyone burned the clues.
Yeah.
And what was really interesting is that after that, survivors stopped doing the public clues. They stopped putting the clues in the rewards a little bit. They started just hiding them because they recognized that like these overly public advantages, they recognized at the time, were discouraging actually advantage-based gameplay. And that you needed to force conditions where people had to keep things silent. Like today, Jeff was annoyed, I guess this week, Jeff was annoyed that everyone told Rachel the plan. And of course he's annoyed because number one, it's a little flaccid, but number two, it makes for bad TV, right? Good TV is the blind side. It's the hashtag blind side. It used to appear on the bottom of the screens because, it was good TV and they wanted you to tell everyone who wasn't watching. So they
Where
want to
did you get
control.
that Jeff was annoyed in the when at tribal council?
Oh, he just based on his reaction. He's like, and Teeny, I'm sure even you told, you told Rachel she was going home. Did you all tell Rachel she was going home?
Hmm.
He's
But
frustrated.
I
I
think
don't
he
blame him.
knows Rachel has the idol. Like I think, I felt like that. Is he just like is he himself acting at tribal council sometimes?
He might be a little bit for sure, but he definitely gets annoyed about this free sharing of
Yeah.
information.
Well,
And
that's why there's the
safety without
shot in the
power.
dark. Yeah.
That's what I meant. But then also, and they did something really subtle this season, but that last journey that Rachel went on with the
Yes.
table, they
Yes.
made it ridiculous. Like it was fun for viewers, but it was insane. And the reason why they made it insane was because if you go back to the camp and you tell that true story, nobody's going to believe it. It's a
Hmm.
fake story. They created a journey that was so ridiculous that it was impossible to be believed because they're tired of people telling everybody everything.
Hmm.
So burning the three-way advantage, the advantage has been solved. It will never not be used like that again, which also means it's never coming back. I mean, it's the optimal way to play. And what instead is going to happen is there's going to be more advantages that are like totally secret and that are totally like, you can't share.
Yeah.
Brandon Donlin, I saw a clip on like his Instagram, I think, or somebody else's Instagram that I thought was like such a profound and incredible idea. I
Yes.
was like, dear God, this is a really interesting idea. He was suggesting there was a verbal only idol, that the idol is saying a phrase akin to how you did it at 41, and that you can say the phrase at tribal council to Jeff and you can get the idol. But the thing about it is that like nobody can verify and you can't tell anybody else the phrase. So it's like this big what if. And I was like, that's an amazing
Do you
idea.
get a physical idol after that? Or Jeff says the immunity idol phrase has been said at tribal council and now this person is safe?
No, the phrase is the idol.
Okay.
Saying the phrase is the idol, is the advantage. It's not like you say it and then at tribal and then like you would get one later on in your bag.
Yeah.
I think that was a really good idea, honestly. And that things like this shared idol can never happen again. Like,
What
you
should the
need to know.
phrase be?
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, you're gonna say it like when you're going to immunity, so it needs to be something badass. It needs to be like I can't even hypothesize.
I mean, if you're at tribal council, it has to be something that's like, hey, everybody, vote for me tonight. I'm begging you.
maybe you have to say that, and then you have to be like, oh, actually, I didn't mean it. I don't know what came over
Yeah,
me.
that is something I might say if I was wanting to go home, but I would never actually mean that.
Yeah. What do you have like the B&B, right?
Yes,
The kind of
yes.
like you can have them brainstorm on
They
what this
could
will
come
be.
up with Mike and Liana. We'll come up
Yeah,
with the
they're
right
funnier
phrase.
than I am. They'll get you something good.
Okay.
But the point is that like this advantage is ill thought out for a period of Survivor where like advantage gameplay is discouraged and it won't be back. That's my assessment.
Okay. Drew, what else is going on in your world when you're not watching Survivor?
Yeah, well, I haven't been following Survivors closely. I don't know if I mentioned this, just because it's like I'm in grad school, I'm at Oxford, stuff like that. Tournament of Champions will be on the card sooner or later for Jeopardy. So
Wow, a champion.
the champion. Can you believe it? I know. At least I won something. But yeah, that's very exciting. The level of competition will be very high, so we'll see how that goes. It is nice talking about.
What if at some point you go back for Jeopardy and Ken Jennings says, Drew, you know so much about Jeopardy. Come here. Take my place on the stage. Come sit in my at my podium and explain this to the crowd.
I'd probably do it. But
okay.
There's a difference between Jeopardy and Survivor. And I like Jeopardy. Survivor Tribal Council is a holy place. Make no mistake.
The Alex Trebek Theater is not a holy place.
It's a good place. I like it a lot. I'm happy to be there. I'm happy to win lots of money there, for sure. That's helped with my enjoyment. But going to the podium when it's not going to be on TV, it's a little different than sitting in the chair.
You don't even have to say it. Do you know the exact dollar amount that you won on Jeopardy?
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Oh, well, I mean, a great day's of work. I'll tell you, I made more Jeopardy, if you're winning, you make on average $40,000 an hour. I mean,
Wow.
what was the last time you had a job that paid you $40,000 an hour?
Never.
I
Never.
made more in a day in Jeopardy than I did on Survivor, and
Wow.
I had to go live out there in the middle of the nowhere for
Yeah.
23 days. So it's a good gig. But there's something about the adventure of Survivor that really is irreplaceable. So, you know, I'm a loyalist,
Okay.
always at heart. Other than that, though, not a ton is going on. I got to get a job. I'm about finished with grad school, which is sad. And,
Yeah.
you know,
What job will you have when you get through graduate school?
I don't know, Rob. I have no idea. I might just for a year, like try and do like the writing stuff.
Yeah.
Work in publishing, something like that, just for a couple of years. And if that,
But will
that
you
defaults
probably
really
be a professor?
well, I would like to be a professor, but I think that kind of academia is on the way out. I think that due to like developments in AI and due to changes in the economy, it doesn't
Yeah.
really make a lot of sense to go to school, and it means that a lot of these schools won't exist in a couple decades. And so, like being a professor is
Well,
going
this
to get
is
a lot
not great timing to be
horrible
graduating from
timing.
Oxford.
I know. Well, I mean, you know, hopefully you can do something else with it. But I just think academia is not a safe bet in the long run. But you know, when has life ever been safe?
But
Doing
what
Survivor
is?
wasn't
But what
safe.
is?
Yeah. So it may be fun to
Nothing's a
go out
safe
there
bet.
and try something crazy. So I
Yeah.
think I'll take a year to do the writing stuff. If that defaults, I'll go get another degree, either a PhD or law school or an MBA. I don't know. So we'll see.
Okay. Well, Drew, anything else that you're watching? I know you're busy.
Anything else I'm
yeah,
watching?
what's are the types of things that entertain you?
Watching a lot of chess recently. You know, the World Chess Championship, very exciting.
How
Not
do
to
you
regular
watch that?
people.
Is it on Twitch or is it on TV?
Yeah, well, it's on Twitch, but you can go and I'll do like some of the recap videos. I like this dude named Gotham Chess, you know, who's very popular on YouTube. He's got like 5 million subscribers.
Who's the best Survivor chess player? Is it you?
It could be me. I mean, the thing is that there's a guy on production who plays a lot of chess.
Yes.
At Ponderosa. You know who this is?
No.
Oh, okay. I think Billy's his name. Plays a lot of chess. And we played, and I was like, how do I stack? I beat him, and I was like, how do I stack? He was really good. And he's like, well, you're better than James. You're really good. You're as good as Spencer. You're about as good as Spencer, I'd say.
Wow.
And so I was tied with the best he played. So that's pretty good.
Spencer was at Ponderosa for like one day.
Yeah, well, I don't know. That's a very good point. They must have played in that one day. And also Spencer was, a little malnourished. So I'm sure he's better than me if we were to square up face to face.
Yeah.
Other than that, though, I started watching Barry recently. It's funny.
Okay.
And other than that, not much going on.
Why Barry of all the shows?
My girlfriend wanted to watch it. I was like, okay, we'll watch Barry. So we're plugging along with that. It's okay.
Now, your girlfriend, not to ask too much personal information.
No, it's
how is this working with like is she in Oxford with you? Is she home?
No, yeah, we're long distance. We've been long distance now for like a year and a half. So it's a long time. The thing about Oxford is that it's trimesters, and the breaks between trimesters are the length of the trimester.
Yeah.
So every like 8 weeks of school, you get 6 weeks off. So during my 6 weeks off, I go back to America, so we see each other in that capacity. But yeah, it's been a while. I'm looking forward to getting back to America. Hopefully I'll be headed to the East Coast. She's based in Philly, so ideally New York or Philly. And we will be in person again. Been together for a long time, like 4.5 years now, Rob.
Wow.
And I think actually I'm headed back to America tomorrow. I had to check the date, which is, a bad sign, but tomorrow to go see her.
Okay. Yeah, that's incredible. I didn't know it was such a long relationship.
I know it really, I think it helped me in Survivor casting because they were like looking at me and they're like, okay, another one. And I was like, oh, I've got a girlfriend for a long time. And they were like, wow.
How about that? They didn't see that coming.
Yeah, maybe he can't socialize.
Yeah.
So appreciate you, MG. And yeah.
Oh, wow. Shout out. Will she watch this?
Well, sometimes she does watch the stuff I'm in, and she's very involved. Like she ran my social media during the show's airing. I just let her do it all.
Yeah.
So now that she's done doing it, like, my social media's been pretty dead. I've been losing followers. I got to get back on her and I got to rehire her. But yeah.
What will you do to get the followers back?
I don't know. I'll start an OnlyFans, go. If I hit 30,000 followers on Instagram, I'll start an OnlyFans.
On Instagram. Is that your number one platform?
OnlyFans? Instagram?
No, Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram is where I do the best. I've never been good at Twitter, Rob. Are you
See,
good
but
at
you're a
Twitter?
writer. You're a writer.
I know, but Twitter, you got to be so snappy, and you got to
Mhm.
like, have these like these.
What do you do on Instagram? You posting pictures of
I just post
stuff?
pictures. And the other thing is, I'm not that good looking either. So like, my Instagram is like, my Instagram is a little slow rolling. Sometimes
Mhm.
I'm
What
just
about
like
Blue
Hunter and
Sky?
Austin.
People would love you on Blue Sky.
Blue
It's called
Sky.
Drew Sky.
Somebody else just told me that I got to get on Blue Sky. Rob, it seems boring to me.
Mhm.
Like, was there any content worth looking at on Blue Sky?
So I think that Blue Sky, in my analysis of it, that I think that Blue Sky is probably better for building community and to, talking to people. I think it's a safer space on Blue Sky from some of the things that people are getting away from on Twitter. But I do think that Twitter is still like the ocean. If you are trying to meet or attract new people, I think that there's still more new folks around on Twitter.
Going to Twitter is like going to the Agora. It's like going to the market, It's going to be a little messy. There's going to be
Oh,
some
it's
guts in the
messy.
street, but
Yeah.
like, by God, you're going to see the world.
You'll see
Going
the
to Blue
world.
Sky is like going to a country club. It's like, oh, here are my fellow, white collar, people making
Like-minded
eighty to
folks.
one
Yeah.
hundred $20,000 a year, and we all have the same politics, and we all discuss like Oprah's book of the week, book
Mhm.
of the month. Like, that's boring. I want to see the world. I want to go to the
The
market.
marketplace of ideas. Twitter. Is that how they should rebrand it?
Yeah, and let me tell you, it's gotten laissez-faire over there. There's
Unfortunately,
no
there's a
regulation,
lot of ideas. A
no
lot of
market regulation.
ideas.
But
Yes.
it's interesting.
Yes.
I'm not going to go to Blue Sky. I'm gonna ride out the ship.
Ride
But
it out. You're going to go down
at
with the
least for a
ship.
couple more months.
Yes. Well, Drew, it's so fun for me when we get together. So thank you for making this time to talk with me. And I told you before we came on, but I said to Sam Moore for weeks, I said, where is Drew Basile?
Well, I really appreciate
I give him
it,
a
Rob.
list of names and I say, these are the people that I need to talk to. And he says, all right.
It's kind of like Field of Dreams. Like, if you call, I will come.
Mhm.
If you guys have me, I'm honored to be here. I hope
Yes.
it's entertaining enough.
I was thoroughly entertained, and that's all that
Very good.
counts. Drew, where can people follow you on that Instagram? Not an
Yes, you can follow me on
OnlyFans.
Instagram. I don't know my username. It's, if you put Drew Basile, it's the one that's verified. So just go click that one. I'm verified now, Rob. It's very exciting.
Okay.
I wasn't.
Do
for a
you
long
think you
time.
gave anything that the New York Post will pick up?
I did have that thought, but hopefully not. I don't know.
That
Maybe
you're
we could-
considering an OnlyFans? Could that be it?
Oh yeah, that definitely could get picked up.
Yeah.
Well, that's true though. That's true. This is part of my promo tour.
Would
I'm going
Jeopardy frown upon that if you started an OnlyFans?
Oh yes, I would never be invited back.
But could you brand yourself as like the smartest guy on
The
OnlyFans?
smartest, that I might actually be the smartest guy on OnlyFans. That is not out of the, that could
Well, you're
be,
not on there yet.
That's true. But if I were to get on there, which I'm not, but just to clarify for the viewers, that might actually be feasible. I don't think I'm the smartest person to ever play Survivor, though, Rob.
Mhm.
I mean, how can I compete with people like you and Fishback and Cochran and Spencer and the Kellen and Sophie, and I don't know.
I think you have a good case to make. I think
No,
so.
thank you, Rob.
That could you also have the most degrees on OnlyFans?
Oh, I mean, I have too many degrees. Like, I've got like my undergrad. I did 2 1-year masters because I had scholarship funding. So I was like, okay, I'll do it my second. This is my second year.
Yeah.
I mean, like, why the hell do you have 2 masters? That's stupid. Like, if you could put 2 masters in your resume, they're kind of like, I gotta like knock one off. I gotta choose my masters.
Listen,
like that's a little bizarre.
Listen, I've got 2 masters. It writes itself. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot that you could do with that. You're the creative writer.
Yeah. Maybe I'll flex it in Survivor 60 casting auditions. I'll be like, oh, I've got 4 masters.
Yeah, there's already
truly
that
everything.
you've got already the photos of flexing.
Yeah, true. I just gotta get some degrees in them, get some diplomas.
All right. Well, Drew Basile, thank you so much for being here with us. We still got one more Survivor podcast to go this week. Club Condo. Mike Bloom is going to join Chappelle and I to talk about everything from this week of Survivor heading into the finale. Check out everything else from this week, including I went almost 3 hours on the patron Q&A this week. So if you're interested in that sort of thing or want to be on one of the calls asking your Survivor questions, you can do that at robhasawebsite.com/patron. Love to read your comments here on YouTube. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.